Welcome back to the Quiet Mind Astrology Podcast. My name is Jeremy Devins, and this is the monthly forecast for November 2023. And as always, we'll talk about how this affects you personally. So you want to know your own birth chart, go to quietmindastrology.com, get your free Vedic birth chart, and you can listen to where things will be affecting you, knowing where the signs are in your birth chart. Here we'll talk about the major transits for the month, including the nodes shifting of Rahu and Ketu, Saturn going direct. There's some big shifts of energy this month, the last big ones of 2023, and then next month we'll start looking ahead to 2024 with Mindful New Year coming up on December 12th. 12/12/23, we'll be doing a live event all about planning your whole year in sync with astrology and all the major events happening next year. We're already there, leading into 2024. So we'll also be doing some review of the past year here on the podcast. So you can always go back to the past episodes. If you want to digest a bit of what's happened this year, you can listen to the episodes on Saturn, Jupiter, Rahu, and Ketu in particular. Those are always useful. And the eclipses. These are all the big turning points of the year. And this month we'll have some of these big turning points in November. So let's talk about how to work with those, starting with November 4th. Saturday, November 4th, Saturn goes direct on the day of Saturn in Dhanishta Nakshatra, which we see here. If you're watching the video on YouTube, you see Saturn in Dhanishta. Now, don't worry about the houses or the ascendant if you're looking at the video. This is not relevant, just looking at the planets. And these are where the planets are in space right now, which you could see with your own eyes using the Night Sky app. You can look for Saturn. You'll see that it's in Aquarius, and it's in the nakshatra of Dhanishta. So going direct now from being retrograde, which happens every year, now we start to move forward in creating more sustained discipline and focus in your long-term goals. This is going from November 4th until June 29th, 2024. So it's a long cycle now of Saturn being direct. And there's some worry some people have about, like, you shouldn't start a business when Saturn's retrograde, or you shouldn't make important commitments when Saturn's retrograde. But that's almost half of the year. So I would not say that's a useful interpretation of Saturn retrograde. I think usually when it's retrograde, it's a time to slow down and go back to things that have worked well in the past. Now as it goes direct, Saturn is moving forward, the planet of boundaries, limitations, obstacles, and structures in our lives is moving forward, so we have new opportunities to create new structures, new boundaries, clarify what really matters to us, and kind of center our life around that. And being in Dhanishta, there's this sense of focusing on wealth, and that can be a wealth of money, monetary, or it could be a wealth of knowledge and information. Depending on where Aquarius sits in your chart, what house it's in, that will help you understand where this is affecting you. So you always want to know your own birth chart pretty well, and imagine Saturn is there now in that house, wherever Aquarius is. So just as a quick example, if it's in your 8th house of transformation and personal growth, Saturn being there can bring about some challenges with your personal growth when it's retrograde and slowing down, going back to old things. But now that it's direct, you might explore a new personal growth path, maybe trying new healing modalities, new spiritual practices, things like this. That's just one example, very specific to if you happen to have Aquarius in your 8th house. But for everyone else, and if that's not you, then look what house it is in for you, and you can go back to the episodes on the houses to interpret that a little better. But now, November 4th to June 29th, this time is an enhanced ability to establish and maintain authority and to have more clarity in what you want to move towards in your life. There's more patience, more methodical approach to life, more structured efforts, and there can be fewer hindrances and obstacles in your way at this time. Saturn is going forward, so now there's more potential to create the things that you want, the structures you want to have in your life. This can be a period for personal growth through introspection and self-discipline. It's important to be hard-working, service-oriented at this time. There's a potential for developing lasting and meaningful achievements with fewer delays and setbacks now. And there's great potential for increasing wealth with Dhanishta Nakshatra, the wealthiest nakshatra. if you focus on it, if you put your structures in place to help you create this wealth, and you have a service orientation in doing your duty and your dharma, these things are all very favorable ways of working with this energy. Now, there's always a potential for positive, negative, or neutral expression of every transit. So on the shadow side of this, there could be a risk of becoming overly rigid or authoritarian, especially when it comes to making money. There can be increased self-doubt and too much introspection, leading to self-criticism, but not as intense as when it's retrograde. There are challenges in balancing personal freedom with responsibilities, although it may be somewhat eased compared to the retrograde as well. But there's this navigation and negotiation around what boundaries you need to have in place around your finances, around your wealth, around your energy, your time, all of your boundaries, all the things that are your structures in your life. Time to reevaluate a bit. But overall, Saturn being in Aquarius is very positive and leads to a lot of huge breakthroughs in growth scientifically in the world, as we've talked about way back when Saturn first went to Aquarius. You can go back to the archives for that. And we've seen a lot of huge breakthroughs in AI and technology. And on a personal level, there can be huge personal breakthroughs as well. So this is a big transit, and followed up by another big one on November 11th. That is 11/11, which in numerology is an important gateway and portal. And it's the end of the eclipse season. So it's a 6-week cycle every year. Happens twice every year, the eclipse season. And this is the end of that second eclipse season of 2023. So closing that portal, closing that gateway of what you've been learning over the past 6 weeks before this, and now you're on the other side. Now you're in this new phase of life, this new path, these new intentions, and setting up the next 6 months until the next eclipses in the spring of 2024. So it's a good day to pause, reflect, and maybe journal, do some introspective activities to process what has happened over the past 6 weeks and over the past 6 months since the last eclipse. Moving forward now with this Bharani energy of the lunar eclipse right before it, of this possibility of new beginnings, new potential, new direction in life. And now you're in that new phase. Leading up to the new moon on November 13th. It's in Vishaka. We see the moon in Scorpio in Vishaka, the star of purpose. And Vishaka is a powerful energy to move towards what you want and to be driven towards your goals, to be ambitious. It's a time for fresh beginnings and setting new intentions for transformation. So now you have an opportunity to really be going forward on this new path in your life. There's enhanced determination and drive to achieve your goals, sometimes to a fault. Vishaka being strong can lead to doing anything to achieve a goal, whatever it takes. And that can be sometimes harmful or destructive. So we want to be aware of that potential in ourselves and not be focused on the goal at all costs, but certainly allow yourself to express that energy of being driven and hardworking towards a goal and purpose. It's favorable for a deep introspection and things around personal growth, especially on this day of the new moon. And this is potential for powerful inner changes and rebirth. There's opportunities to address long-standing issues and initiate positive changes in your life. Now, on the negative or shadow side, there's risk of inner conflicts and emotional turbulence during this. There's a tendency that could lead to being overly assertive or confrontational or aggressive at this time, especially on the day. So just kind of chill out on the new moon and full moon is usually my recommendation. No major decisions on that day, but around that day, you're likely going to be, especially this new moon, beginning something, starting a new direction, setting new intentions. There's potential for power struggles and conflicts here. And this introspective kind of energy here is good to go with, but if you focus on it too much, it can become a little intense. So if it starts to feel intense, maybe get some time outside in the sun or socializing. There's a challenge in maintaining balance during this period of personal transformation and finding what is right for you and others and navigating that A lot of the Libra and Aries energy is very strong right now. So being aware of balancing your needs with others' needs around this new moon on November 13th is important to consider. But I recommend taking time for yourself if you can on that day. On Wednesday, November 15th, Mars moves into Scorpio for 42 days or 6 weeks. Typical length for a Mars transit, roughly. And it will be here. I have to go forward one more day on the video just so you see that it's there, because of the time, the hours aren't exactly right. But Mars will be in Scorpio for 6 weeks in its own sign. Mars, the planet of action, aggression, drive, ambition, power, in its own sign of Scorpio, which is the depths of that power. And this can enhance your determination and your assertiveness. It's favorable for deep focus and passionate pursuits. And it's starting off here in Vishaka, of course, like the new moon. So this whole time around mid-November, very powerful for focusing on your goals and moving towards the things that really light you up and inspire you. There's great potential for transformative and powerful actions. And there's an opportunity for a lot of motivation and persistence and hard-working energy. This could lead to being really drawn to an exercise program or physically challenging kind of thing. It's very good to run that energy. That energy will come out one way or another, which could be aggression, violence, abuse, frustration, anger, or it could be drive, ambition, focusing on a goal, hard-working nature, pushing yourself to achieve something that you might think is not quite possible. But with Vishaka, there's a lot of potential. Almost you could say anything is possible, because there's a very driven, powerful, goal-oriented energy. And Mars wants to have a target. It's like a warrior. It's ready for battle that needs direction. So Vishaka here gives that sense of direction and drive and ambition. Now, there's a risk of being overly aggressive or confrontational, of course. You can become obsessed with personal goals and can hold grudges against people. There can be some really deep, insidious kind of energy here at times, like brooding, intensity, aggression, manipulation, confrontation, competition on the dark side. So if you notice that coming out in yourself, maybe time to pause and step back and redirect that energy towards your goals in a positive way. And there's a positive sense of competition, like competition with the past version of yourself, or maybe a playful competition with friends or colleagues. This energy is going to be expressed one way or another, so we can do it intentionally and positively, or we can have it come out sort of unconsciously and unintentionally. There can be some deep, intense emotions that come up here that can be worked through and healed. And this can be explosive. This can be secretive time. So again, being aware of those energies, you can redirect it and maybe explore researching something you're really interested in. Or maybe playing games or sports that get out that explosive, powerful, competitive energy. And that's over 6 weeks. You got 6 weeks to work with that from November 15th on until late December. Then on November 16th, also, a few hours later, Sun meets up with Mars there in Vishaka in Scorpio. Sun will be in Scorpio for 30 days. And of course, in Western astrology, they're all 24 degrees behind, and they're basically saying where things were 2,000 years ago. So you may have been hearing about Scorpio season before this, based on where the sun is. But now, in astronomy, the sun is in Scorpio. And in Vedic astrology, you can see with your own eyes, the sun was not in Scorpio before November 16th. And you can see with the Night Sky app, it is now. And this brings an enhanced determination and intensity for pursuing your goals. It's a strong, driven energy. Sun, your authority, your power, your leadership, your creation energy is in Scorpio, which is deep, intense, and passionate and powerful, and ruled by Mars. So now the Sun and Mars together is a very powerful energy. That's great for getting stuff done, great for initiating projects, being driven, being focused. This can lead to deep self-discovery and personal transformation. You might find yourself feeling more focused, more powerful, more confident, more driven. There is great increase in charisma and influence here. So you may find yourself more able to direct your energy in an intentional way and get others to work with you and collaborate and be driven and drawn to your direction, whatever house this is in. So you want to know where the number 8, the Scorpio, is in your chart. That's where you have Sun and Mars for this month, from November 16th until around December 16th. That's where that house is, where you have all this powerful, driven energy. So you want to direct it there intentionally. Like, for example, if this were in your 11th house, you had Scorpio in the 11th house, that's the Capricorn ascendants, then you would have this drive and ambition and this powerful energy around your friends and your colleagues and in gaining wealth and status in your work. That's just one example, very specific to Capricorn rising and moon. But look where it is in your chart. And again, if you're not familiar with the houses yet, you can go back to the episodes on the houses. Here on this podcast, I am teaching you the astrology. I'm teaching you how to fish rather than just giving you the fish. So if you're like, well, what does this mean for me? Well, just look what house it's in and then apply everything I'm saying to that house. And that will help you understand how to work with this for yourself. And there can be intense emotions and stubbornness with this that lead to stress and tension. And there can be some emotional turmoil and power struggles that come up with Sun and Mars and Scorpio like this. Issues with authority figures, issues with seeing things under the surface that need to be addressed, and that can be healed and addressed with the Sun here. On November 18th, Saturday, November 18th, Uranus, you see, is up in Aries. And it's going to go retrograde back to Bharani Nakshatra. And it'll be in Bharani for 135 days, about half a year. So we will have Uranus retrograde there November 18th. And Uranus represents things that are unusual, unique, revolutionary. And being retrograde is like we're going back over these lessons, learning these things. Bharani, the nakshatra symbolized by a yoni representing this energy of birth and death. The deity associated with Bharani is Yama, the lord of death. And we are going through this collective, as Uranus, Neptune, and Pluto represent more collective energies. There's this collective energy of transformation and change happening, especially in Western cultures and in America, where we're moving towards revolutionary times. We're in revolutionary times, and it's accelerating, becoming exacerbated by world events. But on a personal level, this is a great time for introspection and self-discovery from November 18th for 135 days. And there can be enhanced innovative thinking and unique insights that you have about yourself. And being in Aries and Bharani, you can really create new perspectives. Bharani is ruled by Venus, so there is this artistic expression that you might uncover in yourself as well. And this deeper element of your relationships you may uncover during this time as well. It's favorable for reviewing and revising any unconventional ideas or projects that you have. There's potential for personal breakthroughs and internal revolutions. Like, this can be a really huge time for yourself, really big identity shifts. And we see a lot of issues of personal identity in the Western culture as well, with all this Uranus and Aries, and it's going back through Bharani now. Over the past several years with this Uranus and Aries transit, we've seen a lot of this unique approach to identification and self, and issues of this in the world and politics and all this. And this has been happening since Uranus has been in Aries for several years now. But on a personal level, again, you may have a new self-awareness, new discoveries about yourself, new personal breakthroughs. So doing transformational work, healing work is very valuable at this time. There's opportunities for gaining greater clarity in your pursuit of freedom and change and what you really want in your life. There is the risk of feeling restless and rebellious without clear direction. And you might have this tendency to resist change or cling to outdated patterns. There's potential for sudden disruptions or unexpected challenges. There's potential for recklessness and impulsive actions that can lead to instability. Now, can be an intense energy here. And there can be challenges in managing the intense energy of this transit, and it can lead to some unpredictable results and unpredictable actions. So being aware of that, we can work with it and choose to make the most of it. And moving ahead now, we see the next big transit for November is Saturn moving on to Shatabhishak or Shatabhishak. You'll hear that pronounced differently in different ways, but that's on November 23rd, later in the day. There we go. So we see Saturn moved into Shatabhishak. I'll say Shatabhishak going forward. The star of healing, represented by a circle of healers or 100 healers. It's this energy of healing, obviously, but Saturn bringing more structure to this. And now we're moving forward with Saturn direct in Aquarius, and there's an enhanced ability for innovative and unconventional thinking. There's an increased focus on humanitarian and collective goals. This is favorable for long-term planning and organization. And there's potential for community involvement and social reform. You may be more drawn to social causes that you care about. There's opportunities for discipline and structured approaches to collective projects and collective causes. Aquarius very much cares about the collective energy and where society's evolving towards. And especially when we have Saturn in Shatabhishak like this, it's a great time to get involved with these kind of causes or things that you care about on a action level, on a structure level, not just posting your opinions on social media, which just can become very heady. But Saturn in Aquarius really invites us to be of service and to focus on actually helping people, doing things, taking actions that will lead to changes in structures in society. And if you actually want to make things happen, it requires a sense of service and sacrifice of Saturn and helping shape those structures in society. That's very different than like the Sagittarius energy, which is more of just the idea of it or talking about it or the philosophy of it, which we need as well. But it's important not to confuse social media posts with activism or changing society or influencing change. Usually it will just influence more heady kind of debates and conflict online. But this healing energy with Saturn and Shatabhishak is very strong potential for healing society and healing the structures and organizations in society. There is a risk of detachment or emotional distance here where you might think, oh, that's too big, that's too much, I'm just going to not even look at it and become detached from it. There could be a tendency to resist change or unconventional ideas. There's a potential for conflicts related to social ideologies or group dynamics, like I mentioned. And there can be excessive rigidity in pursuing collective objectives and saying it has to be this way and my way and this is the right way. There could be a challenge in balancing this, which leads to a detachment and stubbornness and navigating all these energies. But overall, there is this thrust for society to move forward into a more humanitarian collective energy, which we see playing out over time as everybody's getting online around the world, like everywhere in the world pretty much almost has access to the internet, and we can all share our ideas and connect there. And now it's becoming more about how do we want to use that and what structures do we want to put in place to facilitate more connection and collaboration and more sharing ideas and causes that we care about and contributing to those. So this gives us an opportunity to take action on those and put those structures in place for the future of society, because Saturn is not going to be back to Aquarius for 30 years. So it's setting up this stage of moving society forward, just like 30 years prior, when a lot of that was the internet and the internet revolution and everybody going online and that initiating this connection between everybody, and you could send an email to anybody in the world. Now we're at another octave of that with social media and phones, and everybody has a phone, internet now, and this instant communication device. So how are we going to use that, and how is that going to shape society? Next, on Sunday, November 26th, we have Jupiter in... Okay, so you see Jupiter moves from Bharani back to Ashwini. So Jupiter goes retrograde still, back to Ashwini, and it will be going direct towards the end of 2023, so it's still retrograde throughout November. And that Jupiter expansion, growth, potential, possibility, retrograde bringing attention more inward. It's more of a time for introspection and potential and possibility within yourself. And being in Ashwini now brings about possible time for great healing and better understanding of your ideas and your values and your beliefs. Great time for introspection and self-improvement. You can have enhanced wisdom and spiritual insight through inner reflection. It's favorable for reviewing and revising your beliefs and philosophies, and maybe getting some new perspective from different teachers or teachers that you've learned from in the past. There's a potential for personal growth and internal expansion. Opportunities for a deeper understanding of your spiritual path. Jupiter, the guru, in Sanskrit it's pronounced guru, and being retrograde, bringing more internal, introspective energy, and being in Ashwini, this healing potential energy. So great potential in learning and new lessons and new perspectives and new understanding of your spirituality in this time. And it's here for 10 days in Ashwini. And as we go forward in time, much longer than 10 days. Okay, so there we see on December 29th, Jupiter will go direct in Ashwini. So we got this time going back from November 26th until December 30th, just over a month. It's November to December, to go back over these old healing modalities and paths and teachers that we've learned from and do this deep healing work. And then it stays in Ashwini about another month until it is February 3rd. Okay, so February 3rd, it'll move forward to Bharani. And basically from this time of November 26th to February 3rd, just over 2 months, that we'll have this Jupiter in Bharani times, this great time for healing, doing healing work, and exploring our personal beliefs and philosophies and values on a deeper level. Personal transformation, personal revolution is a big theme happening throughout this month of November through December. So good time for exploring different parts of yourself, different perspectives. Now there's a risk of feeling lost or spiritually disconnected during this time, this Jupiter and Ashwini time over these 2 months. There's a tendency to resist growth or cling to outdated beliefs that can happen, especially during the retrograde period for about a month. So if you notice yourself like saying it has to be this certain way, it's worth questioning that and just looking a little deeper at that. There's potential for setbacks in personal and spiritual development during the retrograde time, some limitation on new paths that you might want to explore. There can be excessive self-doubt and hesitation in expanding your horizons and taking in new perspectives. And there can be challenges in managing all this. There can be some spiritual confusion and stagnation during the retrograde time. But as it moves forward in late December 30th, then that will be even more favorable and positive for moving forward in your healing path and collectively for the world on its healing path. And things overall for 2023 improve a lot through end of November into December. On November 26th, just a couple more transits to look at. We have Mercury moving into Sagittarius. We see that in the bottom left. November 26th, Sunday, for 31 days. An unusually long stay for Mercury because we see it will be going retrograde in December. We'll talk about that next month. So from November 26th for 31 days to the end of the year, basically, Mercury's in Sagittarius. Now, this is our communication, our speech, our intelligence, around our philosophies and values, and being ruled by Jupiter up there in Aries that we just talked about. So our intelligence is sort of deferring to this wisdom and this introspective time and our values and beliefs. And it's a good time to be having important discussions about clarifying your values and beliefs, learning from teachers that you've learned from in the past. There can be expanded thinking and a focus on broad knowledge, increased optimism and a love for adventure. Good time for travel during this time. Not on the day of the retrogrades, obviously. Favorable for philosophical and educational pursuits and exploring any sort of learning and education you want to have. There's a potential for open and honest communication now, is getting to the root of the issue, especially when Mercury's in Mula at the beginning of this cycle. And there's opportunities for exploring new ideas and beliefs. It can be very open-minded, creative kind of time. There's risk of becoming overly opinionated or preachy throughout this 31 days, so I'd just stay away from any sort of online opinion battles. And people trying to change people's opinions, probably not going to work so well during this time. It's a lot of that Mars and Scorpio as well, that intensity. So throughout November and December, not a good time to get involved in strong beliefs and values and trying to persuade or argue with somebody about their beliefs. But for yourself, it's worth exploring and doing the introspective work and internal work of being curious about your beliefs and maybe exploring different ideas. There can be a tendency to overlook details in favor of the bigger picture. There's a potential for conflicts related to differing beliefs. Impulsiveness in communication that can lead to misunderstandings. And there can be some scattered thoughts or communication breakdowns throughout November, December. So just let it pass. All these transits, this too shall pass. And speaking of moving on in a big way, November 28th, we have K2 in Virgo, in Chitra, in Rahu in Pisces, and Revati. So the nodes are shifting on November 28th. And we're going to do a whole episode about this because this is a big deal. So I'll just say briefly right now, K2, our most spiritual graha, representing our spiritual growth, and Rahu, our drive, our ambition, and where we are really pulled forward in this lifetime, are changing where they're placed. You see Rahu moves to Pisces, K2 to Virgo. Now, this can be one of the most healing times of your life. This 18-month cycle. Rahu and K2 are one of the most significant transits every time they move, every 18 months. And this is huge potential for healing at this time. A great increase in intuition, maybe drawn to a more minimalist spiritual lifestyle. And there can be a lot of deep self-analysis and inner reflection. We'll talk about this more coming up because it's a big one. But you want to be aware of too much isolation, getting lost in your head, feeling disconnected from others in the material world. And you can overanalyze things and be overly critical over this cycle. You will learn some important lessons around these topics. Rahu being in Pisces brings a strong pull towards spirituality and transcendent experiences. Could lead to escapism or addiction if you're not on a spiritual path or harnessing this energy. But it's one of the best times of life to go into meditation, on retreats, take a sabbatical, do things to get away from the day-to-day and just have a little reflection and space. Huge opportunities for working internationally and in new outside-of-the-box ways of thinking and integrating technology and creative thinking. We'll see this with AI and huge advancements in AI and moving towards this universal basic income idea in the West that is already piloted in a lot of places. And around 2035 is when I'm predicting that we'll likely see that be a much more normal thing. But we're moving in that direction. K2 in Virgo brings a detachment from the day-to-day and the mundane and the practical stuff. And Rahu in Pisces brings this visionary, dreaming idea. So we'll likely see a lot of new visions of society and new potentials of using all of this Aquarius, Saturn and Aquarius energy that's been happening in the last 2 years, what that can shape for our society. We'll talk about this later on this month, but there's great opportunities for exploring mystical and metaphysical realms during this 18-month cycle, and huge risk of becoming ungrounded, losing focus, and having major losses if you're not getting help and support to see your shadows that could show up through this transit. So doing things to stay grounded, connected to the material, practical world are going to be very important. You want to take extra care of your health and digestion and your Agni, your digestive fire, through this 18-month cycle. Ayurvedic practices, eating things like garlic and ginger and lemon water, lime water, avoiding ice cold things when possible. All these things are going to be very important to maintaining your gut health and your Agni, your digestive fire. Much more to say about this coming up, but we'll come back to that later this month. You'll definitely want to check in on that episode, the Rahu and Ketu transit, and I'll do sign by sign for that because it's a big one. And the last big transit for November, and there's been a lot, as you see, is Venus moving into Libra. You see Venus on the bottom right just moves over from Virgo, where it's debilitated, to Libra, where it's in its own sign and much more favorably expressed, and ending this long cycle from the Venus retrograde earlier this year to now being in its own sign, well placed, and in Chitra to start out. It brings an enhanced focus on harmony and balance in relationships, increased appreciation for art, beauty, and aesthetics, increased love and romance and passion in your romantic life, and love and dating, and your artistic expression, your connection to nature. This is a very positive transit. There's a potential for pleasant and harmonious social interactions. You're more diplomatic and cooperative in relationships and partnerships. There's great opportunities for creating and enjoying art and beauty in all of their forms. Now, one of the risks here is you could become people-pleasing and prioritize harmony at the cost of your individual needs, and needing to balance self and other now is a little easier after all the stellium and Libra and everything else before this. There could be a tendency to avoid conflict and make compromises to keep the peace. Libra is the peacemaker and the stereotype of indecisive, and Venus here, you might have some decisions to weigh and choices to make around balancing your needs and your boundaries and your desires in relationship. This could be an overindulgence in luxury or material possessions to watch out for here. And there's a need for authenticity in your own expression and in your relationships here. So that's our look at the transits for November 2024. Again, if you want to see how this affects you personally, look where all these signs are in your own chart by getting your free birth chart at quietmindastrology.com, where you can also sign up for the free Friday forecast. Every Friday I send out an email with all the major transits for the week in write-up form, so you have that to reference throughout the month or the years. And then I go into more detail and add more to it here on the podcast. Also, that's where you can find out about upcoming events like Mindful New Year on 12/12/23, all online. More details coming soon for that. And the life alignment readings, which are maybe fully booked for the year now. It might be some spaces still if you check now, but that will likely be full pretty soon. So if you want to get a one-to-one reading in 2023 before the end of the year, check quietmindastrology.com and you may be able to get in still. But just a quick refresher to review what we talked about today. Saturday, November 4th, Saturn going direct in Dhanishta. That brings this new forward energy on our boundaries and structures in our lives and creating more wealth for ourselves. Saturday, November 11th, the 11/11 Eclipse Season Ends, the 6-week portal of transformation. You're now on the other side of that in this new phase over the next 6 months. What are the themes that are now present in your life? Then on Monday, November 13th, the new moon in Vishaka, the star of purpose, giving us new drive and ambition, followed up by Mars and the Sun joining there in Vishaka shortly after, November 15th and 16th. Mars and the Sun getting into Scorpio brings this driven, ambitious, powerful energy that can do a lot of deep transformational healing work. We want to be aware of being manipulative or controlling. And then on November 18th, Uranus retrograde moves back to Bharani, where it'll be for 135 days, bringing this great introspection and self-discovery and personal breakthroughs. Then on Thursday, November 23rd, Saturn and Shatabhishak, the star of healing, bringing this huge potential for healing and growth in our lives. Sunday, November 26th, Jupiter goes back to Ashwini, bringing this healing energy, going back to old beliefs and values that brought about healing for us. Sunday, November 26th, Mercury to Sagittarius, bringing this expanded thinking and focus on broad knowledge and new ideas and beliefs, intelligence about new beliefs and ideas, and a desire for travel. Tuesday, November 28th, Rahu and Ketu change signs. We'll talk about that more later this month to Pisces and Virgo. And then Wednesday, November 29th, Venus moves to Libra, its own sign, for 25 days, improving relationships and artistic expression. If you enjoy this podcast, please check out the monthly review process. If you want to know how to digest last month, go back to last month's horoscope, do the monthly review process, and then plan for this month knowing the transits coming up. That's a link in the show notes as well. To get the monthly review process, highly recommended. It's based on something I've used for many years. Very helpful. All you got to do is leave an honest review in Apple Podcasts, and I'll send you that free monthly review process. That helps the show grow, helps us reach more people, and helps share Vedic astrology. So we are talking about where the stars actually are, where the planets actually are now in astronomy, which we can see with our own eyes, rather than where they were 2,000 years ago. So we're more attuned and aligned with what's really happening in space right now. And I think more people should have this resource. More people should know what's really happening. And I dream of a vision of a future where there's no longer this Scorpio season when the sun's not in Scorpio. And when we say that, the sun's actually in Scorpio. That would be nice. So if you share this podcast, it helps more people learn about Vedic astrology and makes this more accessible. And thank you for your continued support of this podcast. Really appreciate it. Hope you have a great month. Look forward to sharing more with you next time on the Quiet Mind Astrology Podcast.